Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
Mr. President, I ask that the call of the quorum be vacated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I now yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from Louisiana, Senator Landrieu, who chairs the Small Business Committee and really knows the impact, the economic issues related to the empowerment of women, has worked on a bipartisan basis, and also I think hopefully will comment on how this bill will have no negative impact on small business. I yield the floor to Senator Landrieu for 5 minutes.
The Senator from Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me begin by just acknowledging the leadership of the senator from Maryland and the other senators that have come to the floor this morning to speak on behalf of a bill whose time has come, and some might say a bill whose time has passed. It's been almost 50 years since the original gender equity in the workplace bill was passed, and this has not been modernized in over 5 decades. So in large measure, this is really a bill whose time has come, and we hope to make that law happen in the next few weeks, with support from both Democrats and Republicans, with putting common sense and heart and compassion and good business sense, might I say, before political talking points. This, in fact, could be done. The reason that this bill is so important is because 50 years ago, women were not major breadwinners in families. Mr. President, as you know, there was a tremendous hiring discrimination against women and minorities. Happily, that seems to be passing and fading. There are women now at the highest ranks of corporate America. We've had women serving in the highest positions here in Washington, D.C. and around our country. While there still is a gap that can be recognized both in the private and the public sector, the ability for women with the right credentials and the right background to get hired is easier today and is happening more than ever before. The problem is that when you look at the wage gap, unfortunately, it still persists. And with women now, in many instances, being the major breadwinners in their families, this is really a family issue. It's paying some families much less than others based on the fact that there is a woman as the breadwinner instead of the man. And that is hurting families throughout America, and it is not fair, and it should not be tolerated. And that's why this bill, introduced by Senator Mikulski and co-sponsored by many of us, is important. Now, wage discrimination is against the law. It has been for 50 years. But the consequences and the actions that individuals can take if they feel like they are being discriminated against are ineffective and not where they need to be. So this law updates the Equal Pay Act that was passed in 1963 to basically put the final nail in the coffin of wage discrimination. Now, in 1967, women only earned 58 cents to every dollar that a man earned in an exact position. That was grossly unfair. But it is still, Mr. President, unfair today that women in the same job are still making only 77 cents for every dollar. It is not right, and it must be corrected. We can correct it by passing this law, which gives people who believe that they are being discriminated against better access to the court. And might I say, it also gives businesses that potentially are the ones being sued, even small companies or large companies, gives them more protections in this bill than other businesses have in similar discrimination cases. In other words, frivolous lawsuits will not be allowed. And if your case is not strong, there is a screen that is tighter in this bill than in other pieces of legislation. So I realize there is some opposition from the business community that contends that this bill will simply usher in more controversy or more courtroom time. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. President, that is exactly the way our system is created. Congress passes laws and enforces equal pay for equal work. If people feel like they are not being treated fairly under the law, they're supposed to try to modify that behavior out of court, and if they can't, then we ask them, we in fact want them to go to court to try to get it settled. That is the American system. Now, we don't want people to overuse courts or to abuse courts, but we most certainly want people that feel like they are not being treated fairly under the law to have access to a court system. And might I say, despite the fact that our court system is regularly criticized, I'd much prefer to show up in a court here than in Iraq or in Egypt or in Afghanistan or even in some places in Europe or most certainly some countries in Africa. America has a very transparent, fairly sophisticated and modern judiciary system, and it really is a model for the world. Now, sometimes I do think we over-litigate in some areas, but where are these women supposed to go, Mr. President? What are they supposed to do? Have an appointment with their congressman? Show the congressman their paychecks? No, congressmen don't do that. Judges do. And when they get their day in court, they can show their pay stubs. They can then demonstrate that they've been doing the same job as the man next door, but they've been getting paid 77 cents on the dollar. That's why this bill is important. I don't know for the life of me why the Chamber of Commerce is opposed. I think that there are a lot of women in the Chamber of Commerce as business owners and as women who used to work for other businesses before they owned their own. I hope that they could stand up and speak for women everywhere, that when a woman shows up for work early in the morning and works until late at night, they deserve to be paid the same as a man doing that exact job. According to the American Bar Association, the past 50 years since its passage, the Equal Pay Act has become outdated, ineffective, and wage discrimination remains persistent, widespread, and pernicious.
The senator's used 5 minutes.
I'd like 30 more seconds if I can.
Without objection.
In my home state of Louisiana, wage discrimination based on gender is particularly problematic. According to the Joint Economic Committee report, women in Louisiana don't earn 77 cents. They earn 69 cents for every dollar paid to men, which is significantly less than the national average. At the same time, women make up almost half, 48% of Louisiana's workforce, and 24% of married employed mothers in Louisiana are their families' primary wage earners. This bill is the next step. It's the right step. It's the common sense step to fight against wage discrimination. And I am proud to join my colleague from Baltimore, from the state of Maryland, in championing this particular bill. So again, I thank the gentlelady from Maryland, and I look forward to working with her and my colleagues to try to get this bill to the President's desk in the next few weeks. This is an economic development issue, as the senator from Maryland knows, and I yield the floor.
Before the gentlelady leaves, first of all, we thank her for her statement, and I wonder if she'd yield for a question. The gentlelady chairs the Committee on Small Business and has been steadfast and worked with the ranking members, Senator Olympia Snowe. Much has been said on cable TV about how this is going to smash and decimate small business. Is that true? You know, I come from a small business family. My father owned a small grocery store, but, you know, cashiers are cashiers, male or female.
Absolutely, and it is not. That is why I stressed, Madam President, that, the senator from Maryland, that in this bill, which you have so ably sponsored and written, the screen to get into court is tighter than in other wage discrimination laws on the books, and that is for the protection of all businesses, small and large, so that they're not clobbered with frivolous lawsuits. But Madam President, as you know, or Mr. President, as you know, many, many women are employed in small businesses. I mean between 0 and 5 employees, or between 0 and 10. They need to be protected in the workplace, and hopefully we've created a balance between the owners of the business and their employees, whether they're union or not.
I thank the gentlelady for her comments and clarification. I now yield the floor. I now yield 3 minutes to the senator from Connecticut, Senator Blumenthal, a newcomer, but certainly whose experience both in Connecticut as an attorney general and has actually had to litigate some of these cases brings excellent insight to this, and we welcome his remarks.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, let me join so many of my colleagues in thanking the Senator from Maryland for being such a steadfast and strong champion and a model for me as a newcomer of leadership in the United States Senate. And to all the women who have spoken today, the women of the Senate who are on this issue and so often on other issues, our conscience in this body. They are cutting through the unfounded, indeed counterfactual arguments made against this measure, which is simply a common-sense fulfillment of the American precept that people who work equally hard and equally well should be paid equally. The question before this body is, are women worth less than men? And the answer today and every day should be no. They are worth every bit as much as men when they work as hard and well, and they should be entitled to equal pay for equal work. And yet, in too many jobs in Connecticut and around the country, women continue to earn substantially less than men. In Connecticut, the number is 78 cents on the dollar, and that fact is unacceptable. This issue goes beyond the women who are affected individually. It is about their families, because on average, mothers in Connecticut contribute 40% of their family's earnings. Closing the pay gap for women would strengthen the finances of families around Connecticut and across the country. This issue is about more than just women and families. It is about children. The burden of wage discrimination weighs heavily on the 549,000 Connecticut children in households dependent on the money earned by their moms. The victims of this gender pay gap are the children of families whose mothers are discriminated against. And this issue is about the economy. Those women who are denied equal pay have less to spend. This issue means 109 more weeks of food for the average Connecticut family, 7 more months of mortgage payments, 3,000 additional gallons of gasoline bought by families that are victims of this discrimination. I urge my colleagues to be on the right side of history. As Martin Luther King said, the arc of history is long, but it bends toward justice. Let us do justice today in this measure and pass this Paycheck Fairness Act on this day. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Senator from Maryland.
Mr. President, I now yield the floor to Senator Harkin, the chairman of the Health Education Committee, which is where this bill originated, and we thank him again for all of his hard work on this issue and others related to ending wage discrimination and standing up for women. I yield the chairman of the committee such time as he requires.
Senator from Iowa.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank Senator Mikulski for her tremendous leadership on this issue. Well, a lot of issues, quite frankly, but she has focused a laser-like attention on this issue for so long. And I would hope that when we have this vote at 2:15, that we can at least get to the bill and debate the bill and have amendments on the bill. But I'm afraid that our Republican colleagues are not going to let us do that. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that Sean Robinson and Shannon Smith of my staff be granted floor privileges for the duration of today's session.
Without objection.
So again, Mr. President, I want to applaud the senior senator from Maryland, Senator Mikulski, for introducing and fighting so hard for so long for the Paycheck Fairness Act. Again, just to repeat what has been said here before, but I think needs to be repeated time and time again, in 1963, Congress responded to wage disparities between men and women by passing the Equal Pay Act, 1963. At that time, 25 million female workers earned just 60% of the average pay for men. So now, nearly half a century after the passage of that landmark law, we have made some progress towards eliminating this gross inequality. But it's not enough. There should be no gap. But today, a wage gap continues to exist within every segment of our economy, at all education levels and in all occupations. So for every dollar that a man earns now, a woman earns just 77 cents. Well, that's better than 60 cents, as it was in 1963. Well, you'd think a half a century later, we'd at least be equivalent. But now it's still just 77 cents. Women's lower wages add up tremendously over a career. Over the course of a 40-year career, women on average earn nearly $400,000 less than men. And women with a college degree or more face a career wage gap of more than $700,000 over a lifetime of work when compared with men with the same education. The consequences of the gender pay gap are enormous, impacting not just women, but families as well. In today's economy, women represent half of all workers and earn an increasing share of family income. Two-thirds of mothers are major contributors to family income. In today's economy, when a mother earns less than her male colleagues, it's her family that often must sacrifice even the basic necessities, such as purchasing needed pharmaceuticals, putting healthy food on the table. In many cases, women have to work more hours to earn the same paycheck as men, reducing time spent with their families. While many factors influence a worker's earnings, including occupation and education, work experience, there is overwhelming evidence that actual gender discrimination accounts for much of the disparity between men and women's pay. But unfortunately, our laws have not done enough to prevent this discrimination. So while I am pleased that the first piece of legislation President Obama signed into law was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, again, that was only a first step. We need to do much more. Too many women are still not getting paid equally for doing the exact same job as men. Now, this is illegal, but it happens every day. There are just too many loopholes in our existing laws and too many barriers to effective enforcement. That's why we need to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act. I thank Senator Mikulski for her leadership in advancing this bill. In 2010, we had a hearing on this in our committee, and I was hopeful that it would pass in the last Congress. But, as has happened too often in recent years, Senate Republicans filibustered the bill. So understand this, 58 United States senators, 58. Now that's more than just a small majority, that's a big majority, voted to support this legislation. But because of Republican obstructionism and filibusters, we couldn't even proceed to debate the bill, because you had to have 60. But we had 58 senators supporting the bill. Well, that was 2 years ago. 2 years later, Republican obstructionism continues. I want the American people to understand this. Republicans, the minority party, are preventing this United States Senate from even considering the issue of unequal wages and gender discrimination. Let me repeat. Republicans are not just preventing this important legislation from receiving an up or down vote, they are preventing the United States Senate, supposedly the world's greatest deliberative body, from even debating and considering the bill. Millions of women and their families are concerned about the fact that they get paid less than their male colleagues. Nevertheless, Republicans will not even allow a debate on the issue in this body, debate an amendment on the bill. As an aside, I might say, Mr. President, another reason why we need filibuster reform. This country cannot go on like this. This country cannot go on with gridlock as we have had it in the United States Senate. We need to reform and do away with the filibuster as it now is being used. We need to do away with it when the Senate reconvenes after the election next January. But, Mr. President, strengthening our existing laws by passing the Paycheck Fairness Act is the next step towards wage equality, but it can't be the last one. We must also tackle the more subtle discrimination that occurs when we systematically undervalue the work traditionally done by women. I repeat, when we undervalue the work traditionally done by women. The fact is, millions of female-dominated jobs, jobs that are equivalent in skills, effort, responsibility, and working conditions, to similar jobs dominated by men, pay significantly less than the male-dominated jobs. This is hard to fathom and impossible to justify. Let me point out a couple of things. Why is a housekeeper worth less than a janitor? 89% of maids are female. 67% of janitors are male. While the jobs are equivalent, the median weekly earnings for a maid is $387. For a janitor, it's $463. Truck drivers, a job that is 95% male, has a median weekly earnings of $686. In contrast, a child care worker, a job that is 95% female, okay, we got that? Truck drivers are 95% male. They get $686 a week, median. Child care worker, 95% female, has a median weekly earnings of $400. Why do we value someone who moves products more than we value someone who looks after the safety and well-being of our children? Now, I'm not here to say that truck drivers are overpaid. It's to say that jobs that we consider women's work, quote, women's work, is underpaid. When you connect these things up, you see you're right. Traditional jobs that we think of traditionally as being women's jobs are totally undervalued in our society. That's why in every session of Congress since 1996, I have introduced the Fair Pay Act along with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, which would require employers to provide equal pay for equivalent jobs. Equal pay for equivalent jobs. This bill would require employers to provide equal pay for jobs that are equivalent in skill, effort, responsibility, and working conditions. Now, you might say, well, that sounds way out. How can we do that? Well, in 1982, the state of Minnesota implemented a pay equity plan for its state employees. They found that women were segregated into historically female-dominated jobs, that these jobs paid 20% less than male-dominated jobs. So the state of Minnesota instituted this law. Pay equity wage adjustments were phased in over 4 years, leading to an average pay increase of $200 per month for women in female-dominated jobs. The wage gap closed by approximately 9%. Now, again, my own state of Iowa, in 1984, Republican governor, Republican legislature passed similar legislation in the state of Iowa. Pay equity for equivalent jobs. equivalent jobs. So this is not unheard of in this country. It's unheard of for us to do it at the federal level, covering everybody. But some states have already taken lead. As I said, Minnesota in 1982 and Iowa in 1984. This bill would require employers to publicly disclose their job categories and pay scales, not individual employee pay, but what are their categories and what are the pay scales. That way, a woman would know whether or not she needed to negotiate a better deal. Right now, women who believe that the victim of pay discrimination must file a lawsuit and endure a drawn-out legal discovery process to find out whether they make less than the man working beside them. Well, with pay statistics readily available for categories and pay scales, this whole process could be avoided. I asked Lilly Ledbetter at a hearing once, I said, if the Fair Pay Act, the one I'm just talking about now, had been law, would it have obviated her wage discrimination case? She said that with the information about pay scales that this bill provides, she would have known that she was a victim of discrimination and could have addressed the problem much sooner before it caused a lifelong drop in her earnings and before she had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to try to make things right. So, Mr. President, if Republicans allowed us to proceed to the bill, I would offer the Fair Pay Act as an amendment. Yet I emphasize again, because of the Republican obstructionism, we can't even debate or amend the bill. Can't even bring it up and amend the bill here. Finally, Mr. President, I want to comment on the RAISE Act. My Republican colleagues would have us believe that we can solve the pay gap by allowing employers to give merit-based pay increases above levels negotiated in a collective bargaining agreement. Well, this is nonsense. The RAISE Act has nothing to do with women's pay. Rather than seriously discussing gender discrimination, Republicans have tried to change the subject by resorting to yet another partisan attack on organized labor, on labor unions. In fact, not only does the RAISE Act do nothing to address the discrimination faced by women in this country, the RAISE Act would both exacerbate the wage gap and lower pay for all workers. Collective bargaining agreements raise wages for all workers. The RAISE Act would undermine collective bargaining by requiring that all union contracts include a provision allowing employers to unilaterally grant wage increases to select employees. The primary effect would be to weaken the union's ability to bargain for higher wages for all workers. It would also give employers unfettered discretion to dole out pay increases to preferred employees. That's a recipe for more discrimination, not less. So, Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to stand with Senator Mikulski in support of the Paycheck Fairness Act today. It's a simple, common-sense piece of legislation. There's no reason why we shouldn't take it up and pass it right away. And once we have closed the loopholes and ensured effective enforcement of the Equal Pay Act, we must turn our attention to the millions of women, especially low-wage workers whose work is undervalued. Think of child care workers. Think of the women who are now taking care of our elderly, who are living longer but need supportive care in their later years, mostly women. Why is that work being undervalued? We must ensure that they receive the recognition and fair treatment and fair pay they deserve by passing the Fair Pay Act also. So in closing, Mr. President, the fight for economic equality is far from over, and it shouldn't be over until every working woman in America receives a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. As the chair of the Help Committee, I plan to keep advocating for fair pay and focusing on equal wages until we've achieved real equality for women across the country. But first things first. It's time for our Republican colleagues to end the filibuster, allow the Paycheck Fairness Act to come to the floor this afternoon for debate, amendments, and a final vote. Mr. President, with that I yield the floor.
Under the previous order, the Senate stands in recess until 2:15.